Azathoth. The unknown, being likewise the unpredictable, became our primitive forefathers a terrible and omnipotent source of boons and calamities visited upon mankind for cryptic and wholly extraterrestrial reasons, and thus clearly belonging to spheres of existence whereof we know nothing and wherein we have no part. H.P. Lovecraft. A seething nuclear chaos, Azathoth has existed since the beginning of time. Some theoreticians disturbingly suggest that he precipitated our universe. This entity is both blind and mindless, though of immense or perhaps infinite power. Advanced students of hyperdimensional geometry or hard metaphysics occasionally bring Azathoth to Earth. Usually the being manifests as an ever-changing rhythmic mass, twisting to the thin piping of tentacled servitor attendants. His presence is hazardous. Always attempt to dispel the entity, for an unchecked manifestation destabilizes and grows geometrically, and can devastate large areas. Manifestations of Azathoth have reached diameters of several hundred yards to several miles across. In all known cases the entity was still growing when dispelled. One prominent line of scientific thought argues that the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter was formed when Azathoth shattered the planet previously in that orbit. Given such cataclysmic potential, we emphatically recommend avoiding contact with this being. His habitat lies beyond normal space-time, at the center of the universe. Azathoth is restricted to the center of the universe, or to where it is summoned. On its throne, he rides unceasingly to the thin, monotonous piping of a demon flute, as other colossal entities slowly dance round, twisting and contorting unspeakably. Presumably their continuing deformations have cosmic significance. It is of the utmost importance to distinguish Azathoth and act quickly to dispel him. While can be confused with a flying polyp in his early manifestation, the flying polyp continually moves while Azathoth stays at one spot. A formless spawn is smaller and always black in color. A servitor of the outer gods is much smaller and often wields a flute. Normally at least one servitor accompanies Azathoth. A Shoggoth is unaccompanied by music or by lesser beings. Shub-Niggurath exudes an extremely foul odor and possesses distinguishable mouths, while Azathoth has no identifiable body parts. When seen by Carl Black in the Outerverse, he appeared as a gigantic eldritch monster full of tentacles, with worms and insects constantly eating and feeding on the putrid flesh of Azathoth, which is infinite and always regenerating, providing endless food for parasites. One of Azathoth's manifestations in creation has been described as a colossal singularity engulfing everything around it, from planets, stars and even solar systems as large as Earth's, swallowing even the light itself. Its mass had been estimated to be 66 billion times more massive than the Sun, that is, more massive than the Triangulum galaxy itself, with a light as bright as 140 trillion suns. However, due to the enormous distance between this manifestation of Azathoth and the Earth, its size could be much larger. Earth scientists called this manifestation of nuclear chaos Ton-618. When making his appearance in H.P. Lovecraft's Vision, Azathoth looked like a giant humanoid figure made entirely of faceless flesh and bones. Azathoth is described by Randolph Carter as reminiscent of Jupiter's surface with countless spiraling spots overlapping over one another. Outer God, also known as the Primal Chaos and the Daemon Sultan. Azathoth normally is a shapeless chaotic mass, but has been known to take on other forms when he has been summoned. He sits in his court at the center of ultimate chaos, others say the center of the universe, or even caverns beneath the earth, mindlessly bubbling and blaspheming as he presides over the dance of the other gods. A veil of color seals off the rest of the universe from the court of Azathoth, where conventional laws of space and time break down. Azathoth may only leave his throne if summoned through incantation or through one of the special portals located in the temples of the insects from Shagai. Legend has it that they gave birth to the universe, and will destroy it in the end. Some modern thinkers have equated Azathoth with the Big Bang. This corresponds with the Greek and Norse creation myths, which hold that the universe was created out of primal chaos. He may also be a personification of radioactivity. In fact, the formula in De Vermis Mysteriis for calling Azathoth requires a large quantity of fissionable material. He has also been given credit for the Tunguska explosion of 1908, though most scientists credit this destructive event to an asteroid impact. Some scholars have drawn parallels between Azathoth and the Gnostic Achamoth, the mother of the demiurge who created the universe, or the Egyptian cult of Aten the sun disk. Overall, however, worship of Azathoth in his normal guise seems rare. The only true earthly cult was that of the Nafkh, but isolated madmen have served him more recently. He also has a large following among the Shan, whose temples hold an image of his avatar Azathoth. The rites the Shan perform for Azathoth are wholly abominable. The utterance of his name gives one great power over beings from outside, and his unknown secret name gives even more influence, and may permanently damage one who hears it. This respect has its limits, though, and not even the Necronomicon contains Azathoth's secret name. Some assert that the Daemon Sultan was not always an idiot chaos. Instead, he lost his intellect and body in a great intercosmic battle, in which he may have been thrust entirely outside this dimension. This interpretation is only found within a few works, though. Azathoth has also been said to be merely the puppet of something infinitely more horrible. Azathoth is technically the evil counterpart of God, and additionally he is the blind idiot god, who is absolutely indifferent, yet is omnipotent, and is one of the most powerful beings in all of creation. It is said that on the day the Sultan wakes up, all existence will be annihilated by him, including his own race. He cannot be destroyed or killed because it exists beyond the concept of death and non-existence, making it impossible to kill it forever, because like the other pre-existentials, he will always come back to being. Despite being considered irrational and animalistic, Azathoth has a will of his own and commands his messenger and son, Nyarlathotep, to do works in his name by expressing any kind of chaotic or corrupt sentiments. He is eternity, which is beyond the wheel of time, not only exists, but is existence itself. Eternal dreaming and eternal awakening, nothing that was born prevails, except what has always prevailed. He is his own cause. What could give rise to such horror and such infinite power? Being the origin and cause of all other things, he himself cannot have one, and causality is a pawn in his hands which he plays without knowing why. He is perfect. The perfect is not desirable, the perfect is completeness, it is neither good nor beautiful. For our concepts and values it would be horrendous and evil, and seeming to us more like the devil than the anthropomorphic God who we created it, we would reject it. But it is the truth and our Father, regardless of our so limited relativization. Being chaos, it contains everything in itself, and does not need anything else, nor can it acquire anything. It lacks nothing, except perhaps its own consciousness. Despite being pure power, without limits, Azathoth is poor in conscience, being himself incapable of dealing with himself and the accident for which he is responsible, which is part of this unnecessary floating sphere that we affectionately call home. Referred to as Idiot God, he carries this nickname not because he has a backward intellect, which would be impossible, but because he is completely unconscious, needing messengers and servants to satisfy his desires that he manages to manifest. Azathoth is megaversally omnipotent. He is an entity of unlimited powers and no barriers for what he can or cannot do. His power level is unrivaled. He is the supreme god of Lovecraft mythos, being the supreme archetype that precedes all things, being ineffable, existing in silence and immobile, separate from all things of creation, encompassing everything and everyone within his being, including the outer gods and the one and all, with them being just an infinitesimal fraction of Azathoth himself. He is eternity, which is beyond the wheel of time, not only existed but existence itself. Eternal dreaming and eternal awakening, nothing that was born prevails, except what has always prevailed. He is his own cause. It is the Creator, the Sultan who governs everything beyond the infinite archetypes. His influence is such that it surpasses that of his children. Everything Yog-Sothoth represents is nothing in your perspective, and all the outer gods are nothing but servants and bacterium compared to such power. Azathoth is omnipotence embodiment. He is his own omnipotence, the supreme being and the source of everything. He is the true master and wielder of any and every other power that is deemed omnipotent. Being omnipotence incarnate, he is fully devoid of any potential weakness. The power can never be cut off or stolen, nor its use can be disturbed, and backfired or turned against the user. Azathoth is all-powerful over himself, including his own existence. He can make their existence ineffable and defiant of all laws and logic, also rewriting himself on absolutely all levels, including structure, origin, conclusion, and many more. With absolute control over himself, he can do essentially anything as long as it stems from their own existence, like granting oneself all powers or abilities, becoming one with everything, attaining true perfection. Azathoth possesses an unfathomable power, far beyond any reason, logic, and understanding. He can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, however he wants, allowing him to achieve anything and everything without limit, no matter how impossible or contradictory, completely overriding all other forces and abilities like it didn't exist at all. Azathoth is omnipresent. He is an all-encompassing concept. It embraces with its abominable and evil arms all the different levels of creation, existing everywhere and nowhere at the same time, including and excluding itself. Although Yog-Sothoth is known as one in all and all in one, he is just a microscopic part of his grandfather, the true and supreme one in all and all in one. Despite being trapped in the outerverse, his presence is still everywhere in the multiverse and megaverse, even in the unknown and mysterious Sheol, and even among the holy and uncorrupted eons of the Pleroma. Azathoth is made up of or can transform their body completely into nothingness. He can be anatomically identical to their normal form, aside from being made of nothingness, in which case it is somewhat vulnerable to attacks. Alternately, he can transform into complete nothingness, without any part of their form being more important than the other. Azathoth can create, shape, and manipulate nothingness, the absence of entities or substance. With this he can remove energy and matter from existence, by simply making things disappear, preventing energy from ever being conceived or via various other means. He can control the essence of oblivion, allowing them to delete in eternity, removing targets from all lineages of time in every dimension, alter, reverse, or negate energy, etc. This could also lead to an ultimate goal of destroying matter, as in bringing it out of existence. Azathoth is oblivion embodiment. He is the physical manifestation and personification of oblivion, or eternal oblivion, a state of ceasing to exist, and non-existence a state of non-existence. Azathoth is chaos itself, the personification of the primordial state of disorder and imbalance that creation was in before God said, "Let there be light," when the universe was without form and void. He is thus unpredictable and uncontrollable and can cause others to become disorderly and disorganized. He is able to change, manipulate, create, and destroy anything and everything. This type of chaos is the one that gave way to creation and destruction. He has infinite power over creation, destruction, and change. Azathoth can create true, absolute voids, spaces that are empty or absent of anything or everything that we can understand, including form, shape, dimension, time, matter, energy, distance, sound, motion, concepts, etc. Because of the nature of these voids, anything that enters them may be impossible to ever escape or be rescued from, and or may even be erased from existence because of the contradictory nature or lack of life-giving elements or properties inside them. Azathoth, like his son Nyarlathotep, is able to erase a person from existence, erasing his body, spirit, and soul, the soul being a microscopic and infinitely small fraction of the power of Azathoth himself. He can erase a human being, angel or demon, and even a primordial from existence and non-existence, with no trace that he existed, even in the present and future past, with no possibility or impossibility of such an entity having or not having existed, returning to entity back to the primitive state in which all things existed before, the very void of non-existence. His true form is beyond the logically and illogically imaginable and unimaginable, his true form impossible to describe, for the entity that is Azathoth cannot be referred to for what he is, except for the very absence of information. It is said even the most powerful Arcutha or Primordial could not look at his true form without wanting to kill himself to avoid the suffering caused by a brief glimpse of his appearance. He can create avatars, that is, latent bodies of his original that have a will and consciousness of their own, literally living incarnations of Azathoth himself, similar to the avatars of the Lord of all, Yesh, who was such a magnanimous being that his aspects and qualities had their own conscience, such as Jesus Christ or the Holy Spirit. However, the avatars of Azathoth are terrifying, evil and chaotic creatures that destroy almost everything that exists, with their sole purpose being to serve their father. One of his avatars is Mana Yusashai, whose power is so unfathomable that it alone has significantly surpassed the true forms of beings such as Yog-Sothoth, Nyarlathotep, and Cthulhu. Azathoth transcends absolutely anything and everything. This includes all dimensions, life and death, beginning and ending, concepts and ideas and principles, creation and destruction, boundaries, context, potential, possibilities and variables, levels of reality, existence and non-existence, perfection and levels of perfection, embodiments, their personal status, being and non-being, etc. It may be impossible to categorize or find an exact description for him in any way, as he can exist completely above and beyond all classification and definition. He is unbound and is free to defy absolutely all things, even logic itself. Azathoth transcends all concepts, conceptual powers, definitions and meanings and/or forms of logic, allowing him to exist in a state outside of any perspective, understanding or method of classification. This not only prevents him from being influenced or affected by conceptual powers, but it also grants him a form of total and absolute freedom, as there are no longer restrictions that bind him, as no concept can apply to him anymore. Azathoth can transcend the concepts of life and death. Therefore, he cannot be regarded as living, dead or even immortal, as he may have never been alive and dead at some point, making him a whole different kind of being. Azathoth is not limited to gender and sex, transcending existing genders and surpassing normal comprehension. He usually has no definition or actual characteristics representing a gender at their core, although it is generally referred to as a man, similar to God who is genderless but is more referred to as masculine. He transcends all forms of dualities, being independently and qualitatively beyond various dualism systems and their conceptual level. Beings of transduality exist at higher levels above and beyond binary oppositions and dueling systems, making them unaffected by binary concepts, thus gaining control over those binary concepts of dualism. Azathoth able to control the final force, the one that causes all of existence to end. Apocalyptic force does not mean he need to necessarily destroy, just end the universal cycle, making it the representation of end or omega. He can truly tamper with the end power of existence and terminate any universal cycle, creating absolute chaos. Azathoth can create black holes that can virtually suck in matter and energy. Through gravitational singularity, the victim will be ripped to shreds when they enter a black hole. Their body would be stretched apart to a point of compression, causing a lot of pain and suffering. When they enter into a gravitational singularity, they would be erased to nothingness as body molecules, matter and energy will be absorbed, causing instant death. In one of his manifestations, Azathoth literally created the biggest black hole in the universe. Azathoth's mind and body is blocked to the entire universe. He knows absolutely nothing and is oblivious to effects and conditions, regardless of if they come from the past, present, or future. In effect, his mind, upon activating this ability, becomes a black hole, a void through which no intelligence, knowledge, memory, reflex, instinct or response may escape. Azathoth is and can become the binding source of all existence, forever bound and representing the infinite cosmos in creation that binds existence together by its primordial power and energy and force, and all things that emerges from the source, such as the components of reality, both physical and metaphysical, all the same. He has indisputable dominion over totality, and so that as long as he exists, all that is and everything connected to all things does as well. He is the source of absolute, perfect and primordial dreams in every living being everywhere, directly to cosmic and universal scales. Azathoth being the binding existence together by the force and energy of dreams, giving the users instant and total dominion over all the powers of dreams and sleep. As long as he exists, all that are dreams and everything connected to it does as well. Azathoth is almighty in every sense in his dreams, having infinite power and abilities that can elevate him to a supreme position in dream reality and superhuman in the real world. He can manipulate all forms of dreams freely and without limit, be it their own or others. He can extend dreams beyond his boundaries and into the real world, making any dream have a complete impact on reality and in the user's control. Azathoth can create, manipulate and shape force in all its forms, whether physical, transcendent, natural, spiritual, mental, cosmic, all the absolute forces that make up the flow and nature of reality. He can turn a tornado into a gentle breeze, bring a raging tsunami to a halt, annihilate a continent simply by slamming one's palm into the earth, provided the user understands the natural forces required for continental destruction, cause a massive destruction with a simple snap of fingers, and many more effects on a whim. Azathoth can bring all supernatural powers and activity in the area to a complete standstill by denying him all the force he relies upon to function. The Supreme Archetype is the ultimate form of Azathoth. It is a transformation he obtains by merging with all the outer gods, great old ones and his consort, becoming the omnipotent deity of Lovecraftian myths, the Supreme Archetype, whose same Yog-Sothoth is part. The Supreme Archetype is an all-encompassing oneness that exists as all-in-one and one-in-all of limitless being and self, acting as the animating essence of all existence that subsumes even the ultimate mystery which underlies all manifested phenomena, holding even the outerverse and its transcendent inhabitants as facets of itself. Much like the rest of existence is itself comprised of fractionary aspects of him. In this form, Azathoth is the supreme god of all existence, being the ultimate creator and destroyer of everything in the universe and beyond. He is perfect, omnipotent, without weaknesses or any flaws, being infinite, omnipresent, omniscient and omnificence. Even God, Iron and cows are indescribably weaker than the powers of the Supreme Archetype, whose only being that can surpass him is the creator of the universe himself. Truly not enough words can do justice to describe Azathoth, the Lord of all Eldritch. May his sleep remain eternal.